We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd just like to say hello. Thank you everyone so much for being here with us. It's great to have everybody. Thank you for joining us for our PopCon virtual event. I would like to introduce our guest today. We have Jeffy Kennedy, who is going to kindly be moderating for us. Thank you so much. And we have our guest of honor, Julia Quinn, who has written over 30 novels that have been translated into 41 different languages. And of course, some of you may have heard of the Bridgerton novels, which have been quite popular on Netflix recently. So a big thank you as well to Julia for being here with us today. I'm going to hand it over to Jeffy now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhonda. So hi, Julia.
Hi.
It's lovely to have you here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. I was about to say, I'm thinking the weather is probably nicer for you than it is for us, but actually we're having a partly cloudy day here in Seattle. So that's a nice change from this week, which has been pretty miserable.
That's wonderful. I'm actually not in San Antonio either. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So we're both like zooming in to San Antonio from our different locations. So I know everybody's very excited to hear from you. And what I'd like to do is we'll talk for a little bit and then we will take questions from the audience towards the end. So people can put those in the chat and I'll be watching for that. So Julia, let's go back in time, begin at the beginning. How did you first become a writer? Was that something you had planned on from the beginning?
You know, I don't think I planned it, but it did seem to happen fairly early on. There are kind of two times I began. The first time, which I think is the more charming story. Well, I'll start with the less charming story. I mean, it's not charming. It's just not as charming as the other one, which is just that, you know, I was a big reader. As I think all writers start out as readers. Not every reader becomes a writer, but I think all writers were readers. And what I loved to read in my free time were historical romance novels. And so I started writing one the year between my junior and senior year of college. And then after I graduated, I had decided I wanted to go to medical school. But I decided quite late in my college career. So I had to do all my pre-med requirements. And so you know, that took up enough time that I couldn't get like a proper real job. And so, you know, I had kind of, you know, something that didn't require too much time or brain power. And I used the rest of my time to finish that novel. And so that's how I got started for what is my career now. The first book I wrote did turn out to be the first book I published, called Splendid. However, if you go back a few years, when I think I was 13, my parents were divorced and I lived primarily with my mother in Connecticut, but I spent my summers with my dad in California. And I was reading sweet dreams romances, which are sort of like the Harlequins for teenagers. They don't really exist in this format now. In fact, they don't make them. But I loved them. I brought some with me. I would get them at the library. And you know, my dad was kind of looking at it going like, you know, he sort of thought I should be reading something perhaps a little bit more difficult or improving, not necessarily instead of these books, but at least in addition. And so he said to me, you know, he asked me about them and he said, well, you know, I'm curious why you're reading them. And I said, well, for pleasure. And he said, well, that's important. But, you know, I think reading should be something more also. And, you know, give me, you know, something you're getting out of these that, you know, other than just, you know, fun and pleasure, you know, something that's changing your mind in some way. And I won't bug you about it. And so I said, well, vocabulary words. And he said, okay. He said, can you point to a vocabulary word in this book that you didn't already know? I could not.
Oops.
Yeah, I say these books had a lot to recommend them, but a robust vocabulary was not one of them. And so then I said, well, it's research because I'm going to write one. And he said, okay, like to him, that was really exciting. And so he said, great. Well, you can have my computer tonight. So this is 1983. We were one of the only people who had a personal computer. It was a Osborne. The screen was about this big, black, and with the blinking green cursor. And we used WordStar, which was a very early word processing program.
Which
And
is the one that George R.R. Martin still uses.
He does?
Yes.
Okay, that's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts. Anyway,
Well,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. I'm fascinated by that because one thing I know, the only thing I know about WordStar now is that it hasn't been updated in like 2 decades.
Right.
The company does not exist. Anyway, so he sat me down and I started working. And, and he told me later, he thought for sure I'd come back in about an hour and say, all right, give me the Joseph Conrad, I'll read it. But I just kept going. And I wrote not the whole novel that summer, but I think over the course of 2 or 3 summers, I wrote an entire teen romance novel. And when I finished it, I think I was 16, I sent it off to Sweet Dreams, which was the series of books that I really liked, trying to get it published. And they rejected me in like a week, which leads me to believe they didn't read it. They only looked at my cover letter and said, she's a teenager. Because I wrote, I'm a teenager, so I think you're going to find this to be very authentic. I mean, frankly, I thought it was a really good cover letter, and I still do. But somebody there just, I think, didn't have, the mental creativity to think, actually, maybe this might be a cool thing, and just rejected it out of hand, because I know enough about publishing to know that no one gets rejected out of the slush pile in a week. It just doesn't happen. And so the slush pile, if you're not familiar with the term, is just, those are the manuscripts that come in that are unagented. People just send them randomly to the publishing house. And usually they sit in a pile and months and months and months. And every now and then some poor editor, has said, you have to do the slush pile now. And they reach in and they get one and they look at it. No one gets rejected in a week. It takes forever. So
especially back in the days of paper, when there was
exactly.
literally a pile. Yeah.
Yeah, there was literally a pile. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, and I didn't send it anywhere else, which is really too bad. But I'm convinced that that novel is how I got into college, because I applied early to Harvard University, which is not, it's harder to get into today than it was then, but it was still pretty hard then. And one of the questions was, list 10 books that have been very meaningful to you, or give us, talk about one book. So you could either just do a list, or you could actually write a little essay about the one book in your life that was the most meaningful. So I wrote about the book that I wrote, and the experience of writing it and getting it rejected and all that. And I'm convinced that that's what got me in, because there's nothing else about me that was particularly different or interesting. I mean, I had good grades, but so does everybody who's applying. So I'm convinced that that's what did it. So I'm, romance novels made my life, I guess, in more ways than one.
That's awesome. That's a great tagline, right? All the ways that romance novels made our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that later in college, you decided that you were going to go to medical school. What did you go to college for initially? Were you studying language or writing, or?
When, going in, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And which I think is totally fair. I mean, some kids know, some kids don't. Yeah. Most of us don't. And, Harvard is a school of arts and sciences. They have no practical majors. You can't major in pre-business, pre-law, marketing, or anything like that. And so I ended up, I flirted with architecture. I ended up majoring in art history, studying primarily the history of architecture, because I thought that was a really interesting way to look at history, to study the built environment. Never with any idea, thought that this is what I'm going to do with my life. It was really, the mindset there really is that you major in something you're kind of intellectually curious about, and then you go on to graduate school to do something that will actually affect your career.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, yeah. And so, I don't know what I thought I was gonna do, but then my senior year, I took a class with actually a very, very well-known biologist named E.O. Wilson, who just passed away recently. And it was one of the cases where they actually had one of their really famous academics teaching undergraduates, which was wonderful. And he was a fabulous teacher. And I thought, wow, I really do like science. I was the classic case of the girl who was good at STEM, who was kind of trained by society to think that it was unfeminine. And I went into other things. And I thought, maybe so I thought, I think I would like to be a doctor, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had no idea how to get a job. I mean, who knows how to get a job? I don't know how to get a job. But I did know how to apply to school. And so I thought, okay, well, if I want to go into medicine, the path to doing that is very clear, and I know how to do that. So, and I'm sure I would have been happy. But other things happened that were better.
Well, and the path to being a writer is not as clear. There's not a particular career path, or it's not like you can get hired and get a job.
Right.
So how did you end up getting that first book published? Splendid, you said, was your
It's called
first?
Splendid, yes. So I got an agent, which I think is generally speaking the right way to go. There are always exceptions, but generally speaking it is. And I got the agent the old-fashioned way, which was nepotism. I am the first one to, this doesn't mean I didn't face rejection, but it just happens to be that that's what I did. It just so happened at the time that my boyfriend's father, my boyfriend who I later married, this was a serious relationship, but my boyfriend's father was dating the most powerful woman in publishing. This was very good for me. And I went to her for advice, and she said, I don't really know anything about romance novels. It wasn't her field. She said, but she read the first 4 chapters of my book. She said, I can tell you do. And I can tell this is very confident writing. And so she called her friend who was an agent, who happened to be the agent for Nora Roberts. So,
nice.
Right. So this person knows romance. And so this person said to her, I'm not looking to take on anyone new right now, but we have other newer agents at our agency who are building their list. So have her send it to this person. And I did. But it still took, I think, 3 months before I heard from her. And in fact, at one point, her assistant, who was later fired, although presumably not for this reason, mistakenly told me I had been rejected. Like, it had been there for so long that I finally got up the nerve and courage to call, and just because, and everything says if we've had it for 3 months or whatever, feel free to call, but still I think everybody's just like, oh, I don't want to bug them. So finally I got my nerve up and I called him, and he said, oh yeah, we rejected that one. And I said, I said, well, I never heard anything. He said, oh, we mailed it back. I said, but I sent a self-addressed stamped envelope, because that's what you had to do then. He said, oh, we lose those all the time. We probably accidentally sent your manuscript to someone else. And I was like,
excuse me?
So I'm thinking some science fiction writer in Florida has my manuscript now, and I don't even have his manuscript. So I thought I was rejected. And so I started at that point doing it the non-nepotism way, which was, and remember, no internet now, this is 1993. I was living in Berkeley, California. So I would walk to the Central Library, which was walkable from my apartment. And I got the Writer's Digest books, a guide to agents, and looked up the ones who's looking for historical romance, figuring, who are they representing, writing the query letters, and then most of the time getting rejected. Occasionally someone would ask for a partial, occasionally someone would ask for full manuscript. And I'm doing all this and getting mostly rejected from everybody. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call from this agent who I thought rejected me and sent my manuscript to, whoever, saying she'd like to represent me. So it worked out in the end, but I still had the experience of going the non-nepotism route and the misery of that too.
So you got both worlds. Yeah. Both worlds.
But once she did represent me, then, I did a little work with her and she sent it out, and it took about 7 months to sell it. I mean, I still have, I was rejected plenty, including one place that accidentally left their in-house sticky notes on. So I got to see all the comments.
Oh no.
It was actually really funny, because it turned out that the editor clearly wanted to buy it, but her boss said no. And this particular
So it's editor, like the warring sticky notes.
Yeah, it was. This was a junior editor who really wanted to do this, and the people from above said no, we don't believe in it. And the funny thing is that this editor is still in publishing, and I'm friends with her now.
Wow.
She's not my editor, but she's a great editor.
Well, that must have been instructive, just seeing their unvarnished comments on the.
Yes, except, one thing that was really interesting is that as I was getting my rejections, they were all different. If all your rejections are saying the same thing, then you can step back and say, okay, I know how I need to revise this. But like I was getting one saying like the characters are great, but not crazy about the plot. Another one was saying like the plot's great, but the characters are not fleshed out enough. Another, it was just the only thing that was consistent that people seem to like, as they said, I had a distinct and good voice, which is great because I think that's one of the few things you can't really learn that's kind of innate. But it was very, I don't know, frustrating is the right word, but certainly not instructive, because all the rejections were praising and criticizing different things and in complete opposite. So there was no consensus on why this book wasn't publishable until somehow, after being rejected by all sorts of places, we managed to get possibly the only two editors in New York who liked it enough to want to buy it at the same time, which was amazing. So I got a little bidding war, which meant I got a little bit extra money, which yay.
Yay.
Really needed then. Yes.
So you had Splendid published, got your first book deal. Was it for several books?
Yes, it was for 2 books. And I had already written most of the second one, because while I was trying to publish that first one, I started writing the second one because, romance novels our world is full of series. So it made sense. I was like, well, I'll write a book about her cousin. And so I had already done pretty much that. And so that we did the 2 books.
And so what happened after that? I mean, did these books take off, or was it kind of a slow ramp up?
It was a slow ramp up. There are very few overnight successes in romance. It's with most genre fiction, the way to build a career is slow and steady. And you hope that with each book you keep way more readers than you lose, and so that you get more readers in with the next book than you lost with the last one, and you keep moving up. And that's pretty much how my career has been, slow and steady until the television show, and then it went nuts. But the advantage to having that type of career is that it's very difficult for one book to tank you. So
no matter how it feels when you're writing it, right?
Exactly, because the people you've had have been with you for a while. So it's not like you come in, like you're rarely in a situation where half of your readers just came in with you for the last book or something. And if they don't like the next book, they're going to drop you. So building a career as a romance writer is very different than, say, becoming like a thriller writer or something where, to give an example, the month I published my first book, my father-in-law, the one who was dating that powerful woman in publishing, he wrote a thriller that was published. And to huge fanfare, he was this really good looking lawyer, which is always a great sell. And, his publishing company put like $250,000 marketing budget behind it. And it was a great book, and it hit the New York Times list for 8 weeks, and he was in People magazine and all these things, and then I have my little book with not a great cover, I'll tell you that, and just going on. But, and so but it's interesting to look at the career paths. He's no longer writing novels. But even when he was, he had this thing, but it was hard to sustain. But I have to say, he's my biggest cheerleader.
That's awesome.
It is. He thinks it's all fabulous. I get so many emails from him now because he forwards every single email with every single Bridgerton article. Some of them like, Stan, no, stop, please.
So can you tell us his author name?
Stan Pottinger. Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea if the books are, well, I'm sure they're still in e-print. Yeah. So he's a really interesting guy. He was Assistant Attorney General of the United States for the Civil Rights Division for a time.
Wow.
Yes, he was I don't know if you saw the miniseries Mrs. America. You know what I'm talking about? Someone about Betty
No,
Friedan.
I didn't, but
the early days of feminism. He's actually a character in it, a very minor character, but that was very fun for us to watch. And we're like, there's Stand not him, but the actor playing him. It was very funny.
That's cool. That's just great.
Yeah, I have a very interesting family.
Yeah, it sounds like it. With all of the nepotism and all of this.
Yeah.
So these were, your beginning, slow ramp up, and this is very true. I do think for a lot of people, the overnight success that takes a decade, and all of a sudden you arrive. So of course, people are very excited about Bridgerton because it has been made into this wonderful miniseries. And I think even before that, were Bridgerton's your most successful books, your most successful series?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily in terms of the number of copies that came out right when they were published, but over the years, yeah. I mean, when I would get my royalty statements, they would always be, I mean, not like outselling by like a factor of 10 or anything like that, but they were always the best-selling books for the backlist. I mean, and then you'd bring it, you know, when you had a new book out, that one would obviously sell more, but in terms of the older books, they always sold the most.
Yeah. So when you first conceived of the idea for this series of the 8 siblings and so forth, did you have a sense that this was going to be a great idea?
Well, I think you know, one hopes every book is going to be
right.
You know, was I thinking, oh, this is the thing that's going to take off and make my career? Not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think, you know, one of the things that made this series so unique within romance at the time was Lady Whistledown. And that was not actually part of the original conception. That came
Really?
about. No, that came about because I was working on chapter 1, and I had, you know, writers call it the info dump. When you've got all this expository information, all this background information that you need to get out to the readers, and you're trying to figure out a way to do it that's not clunky. Because the worst is if you have 2 characters talking about it when they would never actually talk about that because they both know it, you know.
Right. As you know, Bob.
Yes. In fact, I do a master class. I give writing dialogue to people. And that's one of the things I talk about is to remember your characters are talking to each other, not to the reader. So, you know, it's opening and I'm trying to figure out how to get this information about this family across, you know, oh, the Bridgertons, they have 8 brothers and sisters, and, you know, Daphne isn't married yet and all this stuff. And somehow it just occurred to me that if I had for a gossip columnist, it's her literal job to dump information. So I was like, wow, how come nobody's thought of this before? I mean, I'm sure somebody had thought of it, but I hadn't seen it like this. I was like, this is awesome. I was, you know, like lazy writer's secrets. I can dump the info and it will be fun. And, you know, I can do it in this fun voice and it then becomes this great structure for the book. We always know how much time has passed. And so it just came about that way. And so after I wrote this first column where Lady Whistledown is talking about introducing the Bridgerton family, and
creating the mystique too. I mean, that it gave you an opportunity to sort of like show how shiny they are and admirable.
Yeah, exactly. And but what happened was it just kind of naturally segued into Violet kind of being a little bit upset about it, you know, because Violet, she's one of my very favorite characters, but if you look at the series closely, she's not nearly as 3-dimensional in the first book as she becomes. In the first book, she's really more of a stereotypical Regency mama trying to get her daughter married off. And I think a lot of it was just like, I had no idea where we were going with the whole series. And so she wasn't as important a character to me at the time. But it just kind of made sense that she would be, you know, start complaining, like, who is this person anyway? And then I was like, oh, well, maybe we don't know who she is. And that's how that happened. Yeah, so in the conception, when I conceived it, I don't think there's nothing like super, I mean, I was hoping it would be a great book, but there was nothing kind of gimmicky or high, what's the word?
Like high concept or?
High concept, that's the term I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Her high concept about it. I mean, it was really more of a traditional historical romance novel.
Okay. So when you originally pitched it to your agent or to your editor, which one was it? Did you pitch to your agent and then sell, or did you pitch it to your editor?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't remember? That's
no,
funny.
and honestly, and you know, by that point in my career, I didn't have to pitch a book to sell it. They would just say, you know, 2 historical romances. So I'd have already sold like a historical romance, and then I would give them the idea. I said, what do you think about this? So it would already been sold, but I you know, probably likely I would have sent to my editor. I would have talked with my editor.
Yeah, and
she's
just
gonna
said,
do it
this
in
is my
Rochester.
idea. So
Yeah.
did you say it was going to be 8 books, or was it just?
No, well, it came about initially, I had the character of Simon first, because I had met somebody who had a pretty severe stutter. And in the books, Simon's speech impediment is it's a much bigger part of the books than it was in the show. I mean, it was an important part of the show, but in the books, it becomes a much bigger deal. And I remember thinking, well, this is very interesting. What would it be like? And the person who I met, he was an adult, and he, unlike Simon, he had not conquered it, but he had gotten past it. I mean, he was in medical school with my husband, so obviously he was doing well. He was a high achiever. But it just made me think, like, how would this affect your life, having this difficulty communicating? And then, of course, since I write historical romances where, we have lots of bad parents, although we have lots of good parents, there's Violet. I love doing the good parents too, but I thought, well, how would this affect you if your parents, rejected you because of this? If you had the type of parent who expected you to be perfect and you can't speak properly. So I had the character of Simon first. And I knew that I wanted, the person for him to fall in love with would have their family experience be just the complete opposite of his. So it was really in contrast to Simon that I built this big, loud, boisterous family. And when I did that, I wanted it to be big. So I made like 8. I have no idea why I picked 8. I just did. But I think at the beginning, I thought I'd do like 3 books because, romance is full of trilogies. I thought,
Right.
3 books. Yeah. If I'd known I was going to do 8, I would have planned things better, frankly.
Because like when you get down to like book 5 or 6, and then you're locked into things that you have in that first book.
Well, what happened was, I did the first couple books, and I realized I was going to have 3 books in a row with 28-year-old spinsters. And I thought, okay, there's only so much I can, so I just randomly, I'm like, I need to plant something so that I don't have that. So in book 3, I think it was, I just mentioned that Francesca had been married and widowed. And then
just to break that up.
Because I knew that, book 4, I had already decided was going to be Penelope and Colin, and the timing would be such that, she would be 28, and she was the same age as Eloise, who was going to come next. And I knew that their stories would be very different because they're very different characters, but I was like, to do a 3rd spinster in a row, I should really. So I was like, well, this way we'll have something different. But then of course I get to her book and I think, oh gosh, now I have to figure out what the heck happened,
Yeah. So if you started with Simon and this idea of Simon and his background, did you kind of create Daphne to be the right foil for Simon?
I think so. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I wrote this in 1998, so the details are hazy, but
I can understand that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was really, the Bridgertons were foil. That's a perfect word for it. I'm going to remember that for my next interview.
For theater term.
Thank you.
Right? You're welcome. So, these books have been out for a long time, and, but it is interesting trying to talk about stuff that like your readers are so much more familiar with the books than you are, because there's so much fresh to it.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
It's true. My readers know them so much better than I do right now, because I don't reread them. I mean, I'll go back to look for things as I need to. And, I had this book out, The Wit and Wisdom of Bridgerton. Sorry, you'd think I'd be more organized. I'm not. This actually is in my office. I do a ton of interviews and stuff here. This is just so I'm in my bedroom on my treadmill desk. Ready? Watch this. See, I could be walking while I talk to you.
So I have a treadmill desk also.
Aren't they amazing?
Yes, I've got my hydraulic desk here, and I'm sitting at it to the side, and the treadmill's over here, but it's the best thing ever.
I love it. Now that is what I call it. Somebody says multitasking.
Yes.
But what happens is I end up having to bring up stuff here. No, that's not it. To bring stuff up here to have for interviews, and I always forgot. So I have a very random assortment of visual props I could share with you. Like, here's the Viscount who loved me in Slovakian.
Oh, look at that. Great cover.
Isn't that fun?
Yes.
I also have something I can't show you, which is the movie tie-in cover of The Viscount Who Loved Me, because that doesn't get released till next week. But I've got this lovely new Bridgerton box set.
Gorgeous. So it's just 4 books though?
Well, then they're going to do the other 4 in another set.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've got, here we go, my to-do list notebook, Evil Plans and Unicorn Drama.
Awesome.
Sorry, yeah. So, but the point is like, I never have what I need to show you.
You mentioned, since we're doing props, before you mentioned tarot cards.
Tarot cards, yes. These just came, so hold on. So this is one thing that's been very fun with Bridgerton being so global, is that all of my foreign publishers have been doing these wonderfully cool things. Like in France, they've got these gorgeous new editions, and Italy came out with this box, this special Il Duca e Io box, and it contains, and it's like this really nice, feels nice. And when you open it up, it has a special hardcover in Italian.
Beautiful.
Which they haven't done before. A little paperback of 2 novellas, which have not been translated into Italian before, but the piece de resistance are Regency tarot cards, which are just adorable.
Oh, look at those.
La Morte.
Oh, now see, that's writer goals right there.
I know, to have your own tarot card. Well, actually, oh, here we go, La Stella. So that's star. I did actually take a year of Italian, and I don't remember almost any of this. Like, what's La Torre? Does anybody know? I mean, she's reading books, but that's not the word for books.
I think it's isn't it tower? Isn't that?
Oh yeah, I bet you're right. So
Yeah.
she must be reading books in the tower.
Or it's a tower of books.
Oh, maybe La Luna.
La Luna.
Oh, this one I know. Il Papa, we have the Pope.
Il Papa.
I don't know why we've got the Pope. Oh, here we go, the Emperor.
Gorgeous.
I know, I love these so much. This one,
Those are so cool.
This dude's upside down. I don't really understand why.
Yeah, it's the hanging man, the hanged man.
See, I know nothing about tarot. Oh, here's the sun. Oh, well, look at this one. This must be a fan. Anyway, so these are just so cute. And it, I did a little video of them and put it on Instagram and Facebook. Just, my Italian publisher had asked me to, and I often will do that just to show people these fun things. And now I've got all these, American readers going like, we want the tarot cards.
We want the tarot cards.
So, maybe my publisher here can license them from there and translate them or something. I don't know.
That would be so cool.
But yeah, writer goals. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Goals we didn't know we had.
It's true. Exactly.
So what has it been like seeing the books translated into this mini series? I know they took things and mixed it up, changed the timelines and stuff. Was that difficult for you to let go, or was it just cool seeing what they did?
It was not difficult for me at all. I think, as a writer, I was care very deeply about what I write, but I'm not very precious about it. I really, when I finish a book, I finish it and it's done, and I may go back to it a little bit if I need to. If I want to bring those characters back as secondary characters in another book, I might revisit it a little bit, but I just didn't have any trouble with it at all. And, maybe that was just easy because I trusted the people I was working with so much. This is Shondaland.
Right.
The people at Shondaland, they know how to make television. They're really smart and they know what they're doing and they know way more than I do about this. And so I just thought, you know what? I'm going to let them have at it. And so I am a consultant, but I did give up creative control. They don't have to listen to me. But the truth is, it's the easiest consulting job ever because they send me the scripts and I read them and I'm like, this is amazing. It's like, I wish all work was this easy. It's just, I love what they're doing. And the thing that's so great about it is I think they should be a masterclass on how to adapt a book to film because
yes, because they've done it really well.
They've done it really well. And there's very little in the show, which is word for word from the book, or even scene for scene. And yet it's absolutely still true to the book. The characters are absolutely who they were in the book. The conflict of the main couple is the same. You still got the mystery of Lady Whistledown. The love story arc is the same. It's really fascinating how they did that and how they were able to still, change up bits and pieces. And so what I think you have is you have these two pieces of art, a book and a television show that work together beautifully. They complement each other.
They do.
And you could watch and read, and they work, and I think you just have like a more complete experience. And one of the things I love is that, when I'm poking around and spying on the interwebs and all that stuff, it looks like, about half the people I see say, oh, the books are better. And about half the people I see say, oh, the show is better.
Interesting.
I think that's perfect.
That's perfect.
It's absolutely perfect. And some people are like, well, don't you want everybody to say the books are better? And I say, no, I don't want a bad show. I want the show to be really good. I mean, of course.
So was there anything that you could share that you did, offer as a suggestion as consulting? Were there things that you said really, but no, or?
Well, it was really more just, things that I really wanted to make sure they included. And this is no secret, because they have obviously leaned into this with every single poster for the show. Is in the Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the basis of season 2, I was quite insistent that they include the Pall Mall game, which is like croquet. And again, no spoiler, they have croquet mallets on every single poster. I think we all know it's going to be there. And but it was not a fight on my part. I just basically said, we really need to do this. And they're like, oh yeah, don't worry. And that was the end of the conversation. I mean, they knew there was no way they knew that was going to be there.
There would have been a riot in the reading community had they.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that would have been really tough. And the other thing that they really needed to make sure they included was Newton the dog. Newton's a big fan favorite, and he is there and just adorable. He's a very, very good boy. We like Newton.
So I'm going to look at some of the questions that have popped up in chat here.
Okay.
So I'm going to rephrase this one a little bit, because I know authors get this question all the time, is where do your character and plot ideas come from? And that can be difficult to answer. Mm-hmm. Instead, I'm going to change it a little bit, because I've heard some other authors talk about that really what you're doing is deciding which ones are the ones that you're going to write. How do you decide what are the good ideas?
I don't know.
Yeah. You can go to the original question if you prefer, but
I mean, I'll try to do a little of both. I mean, in terms of where the ideas come from, they could come from anywhere,
right? Really.
I mean, I have a book that came completely from an opening line. I thought of an opening line. I was like, and the book is To Catch an Heiress, and the opening line is, I think it's probably one of the only opening lines I remember because of this reason, but it was Caroline Trent hadn't meant to shoot whatever his name was, Pruitt, but she had, and now he was dead. Somehow that opening line came to me, and I was like, oh, we could turn that into a book. And then the book that its companion book, How to Marry Marquis, came about because I came up with that title. And I was like, that's a great title for a book. And then I'm like, I have to come up with a good plot for it. So the ideas come from all over. How do you decide what the good ones are? I guess just if you keep thinking about them. But the truth is, I have friends who have a jillion ideas and they're just trying to like find time to write it. I don't.
Oh, really?
Like I'm always like, what am I going to do next? I may know which person I want to write about, but I don't necessarily know like what's going to be their story. So it takes me a while. I'm not trying to sift out which ones are good. I'm just trying to come up with something.
Well, that's very interesting that you are unusual that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so how about do you experience writer's block?
I wouldn't say writer's block so much as writer's malaise, where I just, where you just get to this situation, you're like, I just don't want to do this, and I remember when I was writing a book called The Sum of All Kisses, I had such trouble with that one. And I think I rewrote chapter 2 like 4 times, which is not the norm for me, to be having that much trouble that early on. And I was in Mexico, as I will often go away for a week by myself to write. That seems to really help me a lot sometimes. And so I was by myself in Mexico. And I remember texting or emailing my husband or something saying how frustrated and, just disheartened I was. And he said, you've been doing this for 20 years or however long it was at that point. He says, you're allowed to hate your job too. And I was like, it was kind of this revelation because, it's like, doesn't everybody want to be a novelist? It's like, so novelists aren't supposed to ever hate, we get to complain about writing because writing's hard, but like to say it sometime I hate my job, we're generally not allowed to do that. And so I was like, wow, okay. And so that book, I did take longer between those books. I remember just talking to my editor and saying, I need some time off. I just am not feeling it. And I think because I'd had such a long-standing relationship with her and the publishing house, I am a rare bird in publishing, in that I have been with the same editor and publishing house my entire career.
That is amazing.
It is extraordinarily rare. I have, she bought my book in 1994, to give you an idea. So we're getting close to 30 years together.
That's amazing.
I know, we were babies, and now, we.
No, you're not.
No, we're not. So they were really great about it, and very understanding. And so would I call it block? I don't know that I would call it block, because I think I could have bludgeoned through it if I had to. I was very fortunate in that, financially, I was in a position where I could take a break. I know not everybody has that luxury. So I don't know that I've ever been blocked.
It might have been more of a case of burnout.
Yes, I think that's not the same, burnout and block.
No, I think you're right.
I don't think I've ever been blocked. I haven't burned out. Is that a Rita behind you?
Yes.
How did I not know about that? Can I see it?
Sure. You just don't want to talk about burnout anymore.
So what is this one for? Lift it up.
This was for 2017 for paranormal romance. I write fantasy romance and the pages of the mind.
Ooh, okay. So I have to gush on you for a minute. So for people who don't know, the Rita, the award no longer exists because there's been some change in the Romance Writers of America, but the Rita was the highest honor in romance writing. So yay, you.
Thank you. It was huge. That meant everything getting it.
Does she still have her quill? Because I have one and the quill just always breaks.
Yes, because everybody warned me, and we could see it, to be super careful because the quill breaks off. And
yeah, the quill breaks off. Yeah.
And they're so heavy.
They are heavy. So I have to say, I have held a Grammy. My uncle, speaking of interesting families, my uncle has a Grammy, and the Rita is way more solid. The Grammy, I was not, I remember picking it up and like, really? This thing is kind of cheap.
So what year did you win the Rita for what book?
I actually won a few. I won.
Yeah. How many did you win?
I won 3. So I'm in the Hall of Fame. I won for On the Way to the Wedding, which was the last Bridgerton book. And then I won a couple years later for What Happens in London. No, sorry. For The Secret Diaries of Miss Miranda Cheever, and then for What Happens in London. And that's the one that put me into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. And the Grammy, sorry, because this is actually really cool. My uncle won the Grammy for co-writing one of the songs on the Flashdance soundtrack.
That is cool. Which song?
Isn't that cool? Manhunt,
Manhunt.
I'm going on a manhunt. Turn it around. Women haven't hunted, now we're hunting. Yeah, so my uncle co-wrote that, which is super fun. And every now and then, like they'll use it on like the Today Show when they have some story like why it's so hard for women over 40 to find a date, and they always say going on a manhunt. I'll call them up and be like, "Yay, they're gonna have to send me like $2,000 or something."
All right. So we have to come back to this question because the person who was asking about writer's block, I think what they're looking for is how do you, if you feel like you're stuck and you're trying to figure out character motivation or your plot or so forth, do you have any tricks that you use?
Again, I don't know that necessarily that it's for writer's block, but one thing that when I'm having some difficulty is maybe moving to a different point in the book. And I'm not somebody who does that often. I know some writers who jump around like crazy and then like knit the whole thing together. I'm not like that, but I will occasionally, if I just can't figure out what to do, I will move to another scene, often just the next one. And then I figure out how to connect them, because the hardest transitions are very difficult for me. So I might move to the next one, or, sometimes I just will have this really good idea for a scene that's, much later in the book, be like, what, just do that now. And, go with where the energy is. And then somehow when you come back, it's a little bit better. So that's good. In terms of figuring out plot and character motivations, I mean, with the characters, that's something I generally get down in the pre-writing phase. I do a lot of work with characterization in the pre-writing phase. I have to know the characters really well. The first few pages of any outline or synopsis or whatever you want to call it that I do is all about the characters. And I will really, figure out everything that's happened to them before page 1. I need to know all that. And I may come up with stuff that you never see in the book, but because I know it, I think it helps me to make a more 3-dimensional character. Like I have to know, like, what was their family life? I need like, it's important to me. Like I wrote a book called The Other Miss Bridgerton, which takes place almost primarily, a lot on a boat. And so it's really just these 2 characters. But even though you never meet the heroine's family, I really needed to know what her family life was like in order to make this character. And then it turned out that I did end up having her talk a lot about her experiences with her brothers. So the reader does find out about stuff. But I think that knowing that she came from this family and this is how the family operated and all this stuff turned her into the character that I was able to create. So with characters not really getting stuck on, with plot, yeah, that's hard because, when I do write my synopsis, it's actually kind of funny. Parts of it are very, very precise, where, down to maybe even pieces of dialogue, because, I'm working on this outline and I'll be like, oh, I know what they're going to say here. And you have to write it down. Otherwise you'll never remember it. Right. So sometimes it'll be very, very precise. And then literally in the next paragraph, it'll say things happen.
Things happen. Hijinks ensue.
Yeah, hijinks ensue. I'm not even that good. I just say things happen because I don't necessarily know what things are going to happen because it really, sometimes these things, like I know I need to get from here to here, but I don't know enough about everything to know how they are going to get from here to there. So yeah, I don't know that I really answered that question, but hopefully you still got something out of it.
Yeah, you've got some things in there. Okay, so key elements of a good romance.
Well, the happily ever after for sure. I don't know if that's not even so much a key element as a requirement. A good romance for me, I need to like the characters. I need to, I have to like them. I have to, they have to be people I think I would be friends with. It doesn't mean they're perfect. My characters make some big fat mistakes. I personally like some humor, but it's not required. There's some books I've read that I love that have no humor in them, but I usually do like some humor. For me, I like a lot of dialogue. Again, but so these are, I don't know if these are so much key elements as my personal preferences. But I guess the biggest key element is I think the reader has to like the characters. They might not have to like them at the beginning, but they have to like them at least by the end, and also believe that they fell in love. There's got to be something more than just this animal magnetism. I mean, that can be important, but you have to feel that they've fallen in love. I mean, because I think, you know, we've all read a book where at the end we're like, yeah, they're getting divorced in a couple of years. There's no way this is gonna last.
This is not gonna last, yeah.
Yeah. So we don't want that. We want you to think that they're gonna be together forever.
All right. So one person asked, were you surprised that, and I think that they mean the mini series, that it had more sex in it? And I'm not sure, do you think it does?
I don't necessarily think it does. You know, I think it's very interesting, the way that the media has talked about this.
Yes.
You know, I see all the time Netflix's raunchiest show, you know, the steamy this. And I find it fascinating that, you know, this is how they're describing it. Because, you know, I was watching, well, I'll just tell you, I was watching House of Cards, which is a political thriller, and it's a great show. Although I had to stop for a while because I was like, it's like every single person in this show is a terrible person. And I need
It got to be a little much, didn't it? It was
yeah,
just
I was like, I need
too
to like,
soul crushing.
I need to get away from all these terrible people for a little while. But, you know, there was some sort of sex scene in it. And it occurred to me that it was like every bit as explicit as something in Bridgerton, every bit. But nobody refers to that as, I don't even know, is it Netflix? Yeah, Netflix's raunchy show. And it occurred to me that part of the reason why is that Bridgerton is doing it differently. They are absolutely showing this from a female gaze. I mean, when you think of body parts that we as the, I would say reader, viewer see, it's a lot more men. Actually, we see, I mean, there isn't full frontal or anything like that, but we see some nice tushes. And the sex that's on scene is not transactional. It's very intimate and emotional, and it's about people who care about each other and love each other. And this is so different from the norm in Hollywood that I think the media and the press just lack the vocabulary to describe it. And so they go with that. It's like, wow, this is, you know, this is so much sexier than anything. Well, you know, I guess people who care about each other, it makes it sexy. I don't know. So I don't necessarily think, I mean, my books, I think in terms of like levels of spiciness are kind of middle of the road. I mean, I always tell people I'm no 50 Shades of Grey.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no 50 Shades of Grey, but, you know, I'm not shutting the bedroom door. And I think that, you know, that's kind of where we are on the show. But I do think, you know, it was just done in a way that we're so not used to in the visual medium that people don't know how to describe it. And so they tend to lean towards calling it raunchy or whatever, which I just don't think it is.
Yeah, that's very interesting. All right. So I think this is out of the Bridgerton series. Which one was the most difficult to write?
Let's see. You know, I don't know if it was the most difficult to write, but I can tell you which one was the most difficult to figure out.
Yeah.
Which is not quite the same thing. And that was Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. And the reason for that was it was the first time I'd ever written a book where both main characters were very well established former secondary characters. And, you know, frequently in romance, we take a character where everybody knows and loves, and we give that character his or her book. And then we can create the other protagonist to be whatever we need for the story. Well, this time I had these Colin and Penelope who were very well established and had very distinct personalities and backstories. And I'd be trying to come up with a plot and be like, oh, okay, we'll do this. And like, oh no, that won't work because she wouldn't do that. Oh no, he was in Greece then, so that won't work. You know, so it was actually very difficult to come up with something that works for these two characters that already have personalities and timelines and motivations. You know, once I figured it out, it wasn't necessarily any harder to write, but that part was definitely harder.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so people want to know, are you going to do a cameo in one of the shows?
You know, my guess is that probably at some point. I can tell you why I haven't done one yet.
Okay.
So in season 2, with COVID, it just wasn't going to happen. I did get to go to the set once, but just the protocols were nothing like that. Nothing like that was going to happen. With season 1, I didn't want to do it because to have a cameo, it actually takes a lot of time. Even if you're just an extra in the background, you have to spend a whole day getting the hair and makeup right. And then they take all these pictures to make, so they know for your lookbook or whatever, so they know what you look like. And so then, after that, then like they can come back the next day and you're standing around forever. And I really wanted to see everything. I mean, I have limited time on the set. I live in Seattle, they film in the UK. I wanted to be able to walk around. I mean, the sound stage is enormous. I want to be able to walk around and look at everything and touch the things I'm allowed to touch. I just didn't want to use, I had this amount of time. I just didn't want to use it up all preparing for a cameo. So, probably in the future, I will do something.
That would be really fun.
It would be fun.
So we've only got a few minutes left, and this might be a big question for the time, but we have someone who's written 200 pages of a novel and can't figure out how to end it.
Well, if it's a romance with a happily ever after, I can tell you that. How
do you find an ending? Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the nice things about romance. I always tell people it's not a formula, but there are parameters. And, you have to have your couple meet or re-meet or whatever. And then you have to have a happily ever after. And like with a mystery, you have to open with a body and you have to solve it. So, that is one nice thing about working within a genre that does have parameters, is that, how you get from here to here can be all over the place, but where you have to end. If this is a novel that is, more open-ended, then it's tough. I would say, maybe find a critique group that might be able to help you, or find somebody to talk some ideas off of. Unfortunately, it's not not having read it, it's hard for me to know how to answer that.
Yeah.
But good luck.
Yeah.
and know that it's not easy. You're not alone, and it's not easy. I think that's an important thing to tell people, that it's not easy. And also the other really important thing to know is that there is no one right way to write a book. I think I can't stress that highly enough. Like, people will, I'll tell you my process, but it'll be totally different than, so I have a friend who can't write an outline at all. She's like, I just have to start. And then I know somebody else who writes outlines that are like 75 pages long. And I'm like, isn't that just a first draft? So everybody's different, and you just have to figure out what works for you. And, if you say, okay, I listened to Julia Quinn and this is how she does it, and I'm trying it and I'm failing and I'm a failure. No, it's just, you're not me. It's just, you need to find your own way.
I think that's great advice.
Don't get super discouraged. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. All right. I see Rhonda has popped up.
I hate to be the harbinger of bad news, but it's been an hour, guys. Can you believe it? It went so fast.
I'm ready for another cup of coffee. So.
Oh, perfect timing.
That's how Julia knows. Yes.
Yeah, that's how we know. We have talked for one cup.
For one cup. Okay. I am going to ask one rapid fire question that I ask almost all of our Pot Madness guests. Other than Bridgerton, what's your favorite thing to binge watch?
Right now, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
I mean, I love dialogue, so hello. But can I tell, there's one show I want to recommend to people, because a lot of people know about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and this is this under the radar show that I love, and it's maybe not what people would think I would say. So first of all, I have to warn you, it's in Norwegian, so it's subtitled. So you can't be like playing games at the same time. You have to pay attention. It's called Beforeigners. So like the word foreigner, but BE. So it's like a play on beforeigners. Just watch it. It's
writing that.
And they're only six. It's on HBO Max, and they're only 6 episodes right now, so it won't take you that long. It's if you do paranormal, oh yeah, so good. It's a paranormal thing.
Awesome.
I'm writing it down too.
That's my hidden gem. And then my thing to binge watch is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I'm like, what else have we binge watched recently? Oh, you know who else we binge watched recently, which was really good? My husband and I, Dope Sick. That's depressing, but it was really good.
Oh, I don't think.
I know. I feel like I'm giving you all these really weird ones. And then we did Dope Sick.
That's the best way to find new stuff is when people tell you all these weird things to watch.
Yeah. And then the
Yeah.
other thing we did recently, which took a long time and we were way behind the times, but we watched all 5 seasons of The Wire, which was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know you've been incredibly busy with, imagine, a TV show and all this coming out. So thank you so much for your time. Jeffy, thank you so much for moderating. It was great to see you as well.
Thank you.
Before we go, I just want to say real quick, we will have this recording up on our YouTube channel pretty soon, just in a day or two. And of course, if you would like any of Julia or Jeffy's books, we have them at your local public library. So come check them out.
Yay, libraries.
Thank you everybody for watching. And thank you once again so much for being here, Julia and Jeffy. I had a great time. So thank you
for
very much.
having me.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
And if you ever want to come back and talk about your family, we'll set up another interview.
I didn't even get to the weird ones. Oh my God.
Okay, we'll plan for next year.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.